So I want you to imagine that you're standing next to a river. And you look upstream and you see something floating towards you. As it draws closer, you realize that what you're seeing is a baby. Your heart starts to race, and naturally you leap into the river and you rescue that child. Now, 2 days later, you're standing in the same spot and you look up and here comes another baby. And again, of course, you jump in and you rescue that child as well. When this happens a third time, you start to ask yourself, what in the world is going on upstream that's causing these babies to come floating down the river? And what can we do to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Now, the story I just told you was first relayed to me by a man named Jamey who's a leader in the poverty alleviation movement. And Jamey tells that story because it so accurately depicts the way many benevolent organizations manage their poverty care, relief, and support programs today, rescuing baby after baby after baby. And don't get me wrong, this is vital and important work. But what we started to realize is that unless we head upstream, unless we start to get to the source of the problem and really start to invest in restoration, then we're going to continue to have to jump in that river and rescue those babies. And sadly, and albeit metaphorically, some of them will pass by without us seeing them. So my name's Jamey Webster, and I have volunteered at a nonprofit organization here in Fort Bend County for the past 20 years called Second Mile. I've actually served as the chairman of the board of this organization for the past 7 years. And what I want to do today is give you a different view on poverty. I want to talk about how we move from a rescue approach to a restoration approach with the people that we serve. And I want us all to think about how we might be able to take this model and carry it to the neediest around the world. So our organization for years and years was focused on basic needs, handing out food, providing clothing. But we started to realize this just wasn't having the impact on the lives of the people that we were serving that we believed we could have. You know, as we were handing out food, as we were providing clothes, we realized we were seeing the same people over and over again. Now, some were in crisis and they needed immediate support and care. Some were senior citizens on a fixed income that just needed ongoing care and support. But many of them seemed to be stuck in this rescue stage. They needed something different from us. So we did kind of something out of the norm, or I guess revolutionary. We started to talk to them. We started to listen to them. And we actually started to engage them in developing the programs and the services that they needed to get them out of the situation that they were in. We looked at the river, we started to head upstream, and we began to find the source of the problem. Now, sadly, in that process, we also started to realize that many times we were actually hurting the people that we were trying to help. You know, if you look at poverty, if you look at the question, what is poverty? For most of us, what immediately pops to mind is a lack of physical needs, a lack of food, a lack of clothing, a lack of basic resources. And that's true. I mean, you know, that is a definition of poverty. But as we talk to the people that we were working with that are experiencing this situation, what they told us was it's so much more than that. They described feelings of depression, of anxiety, of hopelessness, of helplessness, of fear. They felt dismissed. They were blamed. You know, and there's not just one face of poverty. Sometimes it's generational. Sometimes it's situational. We see people who live paycheck to paycheck. And they're one crisis, one sickness, one job loss, or one divorce away from poverty. And the results of that is a lack of health insurance, a lack of security, an uncertainty of where their next meal will come from, unstable health. You know, the people that we serve in poverty often lack a vehicle to get to where they need to go. And some of them that have cars lack the gas money to even make them run. It was a consistent and persistent problem, and it affects us all. You know, for most people in America, we are no more than 5 miles away from someone living in poverty. And that has an impact on us. You know, the Urban Institute did a study that showed that 70% of children in poverty in the United States will not enroll in post-secondary education. 70% of these kids will not attend college. That's compared to 30% of those that were never poor. And then only 3% of children that were raised in persistent poverty will graduate from college, as compared to 30% of those who were never poor. This has an impact on all of our lives. It affects our communities, it affects our economies, it affects our educational system, it affects our healthcare system. And if you're like me, most of us, when we see this need, we want to help. We want to jump in that river and rescue the baby. But unfortunately, in our zeal to provide support and care for people in these situations, we can oftentimes hurt more than we help. We've all heard the saying, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for the day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. It's a great saying. But the truth is, it is a lot easier to give someone a fish. It is easier to pull up at that red light, roll down your window, and hand a fish out of it. It makes us feel good. Drop a toy off in the Christmas box at the office. Drop a bag of clothing off at the local shelter. And those are needed things, but they're not always the best course of action. And they should never be the only course of action. Let me try and paint a picture for you of some of the people that we see come through the doors of our organization. So we've seen a man who was recently released from prison. He's looking for a stable job, and he needs coaching and encouragement. A senior citizen who's sick and alone and sleeps on the floor because of bed bugs and infestation. And she doesn't have the energy or the resources to keep her house clean. Or a single mom who wants a better job to give her children a better life. But she doesn't have the social connections, and she lacks the self-esteem to even believe that there's something better out there for her. All of these solutions require time. They require genuine relationships and more than just handouts. See, again, it's easier to give someone a fish than it is to walk alongside of them as they gather the equipment needed to fish, as they learn the process of fishing. That takes time. It takes relationship. But it's hard. It's difficult to watch. In our business, what we do, we often see people take 10 steps forward and 11 steps back. And it can be discouraging, it can be frustrating, it can be ugly. But we have to stay invested. That's where the breakthrough occurs. That's where we start to see real change, is when we continue to encourage, we continue to support. Yes, we need food. Yes, we need clothing. Yes, we want to hand out those toys. But that is just one step in the poverty restoration process. It cannot be the last step. If you look into the word compassion at its root, it actually means to suffer with. And a part of what we've learned in our organization is we have to suffer alongside the neediest among us. We have to be a consistent presence in someone's life if we're going to help them and partner with them in their effort and their desire to change their lives. Again, not easy, not always pretty, but the results can be beautiful when we stay engaged and involved in it every step of the way. See, the amazing thing about this is that when you look someone in the eyes, when you call them by their name, when you ask them what they think and show them that you actually value what they have to offer, you can change their life. My favorite quote of anyone that's ever walked through the doors of Second Mile was, "You love me for who I am, not who you want me to be." That's so impactful. And we have to start to move in that direction. You see, oftentimes we send unintended messages in our efforts to help people. And we create unequal relationships. You have those in need and you have people with the resources to give. But the truth is, our needs don't define us. Right? Every one of us knows individuals in our lives that have physical resources and are still living in some form of poverty. They have food on their table, they have money in their bank accounts, but they are still broken. So we have to get past this idea that the haves are better than the have-nots, that the haves have the answers and the have-nots need those answers. We train our volunteers that people in poverty know a lot of things that we do not know. And we need to value their input. We need to engage them in the process of restoration. We need to partner with them. We are not there to give to them. We are there to work with them. See, what happens is when we create this sense of entitlement, we actually see people incentivized to step back and stop doing for themselves. I mean, if you did your child's homework in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school, would it come as any surprise to you that they were unable to do their own homework when they got to college? Of course not. But in our business, oftentimes when we do 2 people or 4 people, what we see them say back to us is, well, if you're going to do for me, then why in the world would I continue to do for myself? They're incentivized to just take a step back and let you do. They're a project, and they feel like a project. But when we engage them, when we create an opportunity and space for them to lead their own recovery, that's when we see significant and real change. And what this takes is kind of a 3-step process. We need to be involved in relief, in rehabilitation, and in development, or what we call restoration, right? So relief is that rescue stage. All of us in 2016 in Houston, Texas, we experienced the floods around here, right? In 2017, we all experienced, if you live in this area, Hurricane Harvey. We saw what rescue looked like. We saw people standing on rooftops. We saw people standing in their homes with 2, 3, 4 foot of water. They needed immediate rescue. Rescue is defined as doing for someone what they are incapable of doing for themselves at that time. But once we got people out of harm's way, once we got people past the storm, we had to move past the rescue phase. We had to start to invest in their restoration. We started to help people rebuild their homes, rebuild their lives, rebuild the hope that they needed in life to go forward. That's what this work looks like. Rescue is a component, but we must engage in relief and restoration if we're going to see success. See, it's easy, and there are times when it's necessary to hand out a bag of groceries. But there's also times when we need to sit down with someone and work with on a resume with them, help them prepare for a job interview. And then key here, follow up and find out how they did. That's when we see change, when we engage people in their own restorative process, when we work and partner with them to reach the goals that they've set out for themselves. It's awesome. It's beautiful. And we want to find opportunities for them to be leaders in this change. We want to empower them to help themselves. And here's the awesome thing. This is what I want to leave you with as our measurement of success. Is we know we are succeeding in the work we're doing when the people we have helped show up and ask us, how can I help someone else? I'll say it one more time. When the people that were coming to us for help show up and say, how can I now help someone else? That's when we succeed. And the thing I'll leave you with is, what if we could scale these results? What if we could take the success we've had in investing in restoration in this little part of the world, Fort Bend County, Texas, and carry it to the neediest around the world? Thank you, guys.